The video game industry, as you probably know, is a series of ups and downs, goods and bads. Everything is cyclical. And today we're taking a look at 10 seemingly abandoned video game things that might be making a slow comeback. So let's get started off with number 10. Video game demos. There was a time when video game demos were aplenty. You got them in magazines. They came with other games. Demo discs, if you ask me as a kid, were some of my favorite games to play. There were some game demos that you just absolutely fell in love with, but you never even got your hands on the full game. You just played the demo over and over and over again. And obviously, things are very different now in the digital age, but it seems like demos might be making a little bit of a comeback. I mean, one of the best, most recent examples is Final Fantasy 16. The developers put out a big, lengthy demo just before the game released so that you could try before you buy. That is still really the best way to tell a game is for you. Now, I know we do videos and reviews, we do the before you buy videos here on gameranx, so business-wise, I should be saying you should watch our videos first, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, to be honest, you can't beat just getting your hands on something for free, touching it, experiencing it, feeling it for yourself first. And that's why demos are absolutely great. There was a time in the last generations or so where we didn't see a lot of demos, but I guess now, since everything is practically digital and internet speeds are getting better, developers, publishers are using this opportunity more and more to push trying out experiences to potential consumers. And that's a huge win. I know demos aren't perfect by any means. I mean, the most recent example we used before, Final Fantasy 16, it's a very early part of the game and it doesn't show you some of the later stuff that comes up that, you might take issue with, but still, if it's a combat focused game, you get a taste of that combat. If it's a racing game, you get a taste of that racing, so you really know what you're jumping into. So yes, we love seeing video game demos make a comeback, and all we can say is more, please. Now, next over at number 9, if there's something that wasn't around that is making a comeback, it's back to 30 frames per second on consoles. I mean, this just sucks. It seems like 60 frames per second was the standard, especially with this new console generation, the Xbox Series X and the PS5, but more games are trying to get away with 30 frames per second on consoles again, and it is a bummer. I mean, Starfield is probably the biggest new example. It's understandable because the game's going to be so complex, but still, you can't help but feel disappointed. Same with other big modern games like Final Fantasy 16 or the hit Redfall. All of those games were teetering on the 30 frames per second precipice. Plague Tale Requiem, also gorgeous on console, but running at 30 frames per second. With this new age of consoles, we got performance mode, we got frame rate mode, fidelity mode, whatever they're called. So a lot of people were opting to choose that 60 frames per second mode on their console games, and we were all getting used to it. We were all getting really cozy and really loving it. And now, it seems like more and more 30 frames per second games are popping up, and it's making those games where we do have the choice to be really great. I still personally think 1440-60 is the perfect gold standard. If developers can get that, I don't need my games at blistering 8K. I just need something a little sharper than 1080p and a good frame rate. But everybody's a little bit different. Everybody's preferences are a little different. So hopefully, even though 30 frames per second on consoles is making a comeback, hopefully some choices continue. And next over at number 8, let's talk about horror games that go all in with game mechanics. Now, horror games for a while now seemed not very different than horror movies. It's something that you spend more time watching than really completely playing and interacting with. That's no slight, of course. Those experiences were great. There's plenty of horror games that are kind of like walking sim style games or story-based things like Until Dawn or more recently The Quarry, even like the original Outlast. You're interacting, like you're controlling the character, but it's more about running and hiding. So seeing different full game mechanics make their way into horror games is sick. I mean, part of why Phasmophobia is fun is because you're actually working towards something and getting some good scares out of it at the same time. A lot of games are going all in on game mechanics. I mean, Amnesia was usually not very famously complex, but now Amnesia the Bunker gives you a gun. And Bloober, the people behind most recently The Medium, they've said that they're going all in to make games with actual mechanics recently in some statements. And even Outlast's newest game, The Outlast Trials, is about game mechanics. It's more of like a multiplayer survival game. There's way more to consider and way more to actually physically play. Then, of course, I mean, there's like the return of Resident Evil just absolutely being at the forefront, and they're incredibly playable and fun. So we have horror games with good, compelling gameplay mechanics. We have good, proper survival horror games out there again. And then we have even smaller experiences like Signalis. There's just a lot out there. There's a lot of good horror games that are just compelling to play, to really get your hands on the controller, and that's a win. We're glad that's back. Next, over at number 7, this is a bit more long-term, but like a return to absolutely ass-kicking difficulty in video games. Now, maybe this has been a trend for long enough that it doesn't count, but we still wanted to talk about it. Difficult games seem more mainstream now than ever before, really. We love challenging games here. I know a lot of the guys here on the gameranx team are absolutely masochists in the difficulty department. The feeling, the rush you get from overcoming a challenge and spending so much time at it can be incredibly satisfying, but at the same time, we also like to see more difficulty options as well, because not everybody likes getting their ass destroyed in something like Sekiro. But in terms of it like making a comeback, there's just a lot of games out now that are less hand-holdy, games that don't just guide you inch by inch. Some recent things have reminded me of old school PC puzzle games where you just kind of had to figure shit out for yourself. Like most recently, Scorn was super abstract, and it was up to you to kind of just figure out how to play through it. And it reminded me of the old days of playing something like Myst on PC. And it's kind of cool to see. Now, next over at number 6, let's talk about a trend making a comeback. It's announcing games way too early. For a while, game companies were being pretty careful about announcing games only when they were like a year or two out at most. Now, they're just throwing stuff out there that may take 5 or more years to come out. Stuff like Fable, the Last of Us multiplayer factions thing, that new Perfect Dark. Remember that Wonder Woman game that announced? I feel like they only just started working on that. Like, lots of games like this recently has been a thing. I mean, Elder Scrolls, that was them announcing it being like, yes, we're making Elder Scrolls 6 eventually, please leave us alone. Did we need that announcement? I don't know, but it's a far cry from a couple of years back where like Fallout 4 was just kind of like a leaked, rumored thing, and then it was announced at E3 in the summer, and then it released in the fall. That just does not happen anymore. I mean, here and there a little bit, sure, but it feels like we're back to like the early mid-2000s where we hear about a game and then we're waiting years and years and years for it, and it can be kind of painful, man. Next over at number 5, let's talk about linear experiences, linear games making a comeback, especially because it feels like in this day and age, every single game is open world. Every single game is absolutely massive and crushing and filled with hundreds and hundreds of hours of content. I'm looking at you, Tears of the Kingdom, Horizon Forbidden West. The list goes on and on and on, and we've been doing it for years, but every so often, a nice linear experience comes out, and it seems like more and more that's happening. So granted, it's still worth mentioning that there are still plenty of massive open world games, but it's nice to see some good linear experiences pop up. Final Fantasy 16 is fairly linear. It's not the most linear, but it's more linear than you'd expect. Dead Island 2, I mean, it's like completely almost linear, especially in comparison to Dying Light 1 and 2 or the original Dead Island. Like, those games are massive, seemingly sprawling. It's nice to just have something straightforward. A Plague Tale Requiem, like I said earlier, is just a linear experience that you play through, and it's got a good ending, and then that's it. I know a lot of people want the most bang for their buck, but every once in a while, you just want a good, meaty experience that is over and done. It knows its place, it doesn't outstay its welcome, and if you think about it, more linear games just means you get to play through more games. All of us here at gameranx, we feel like we exist on this planet to play as many games as humanly possible. So if some of them here and there aren't hundreds and hundreds of hours long, it's nice to be able to see and play through a couple of more games. Now over at number 4, you know what's making a comeback, and I love to see it? Early 2000s style, kind of embarrassing dialogue and edgy, awesome protagonists. Like we have Crime Boss, Rockay City, and Atomic Heart. These are the obvious examples of just like ridiculous, cheesy, video gamey characters. Whether it's tongue-in-cheek, whether it's forced, awkward, I don't care. I just like that they're around. I mean, even Forspoken. It's less of a cool example, but there's just some corny, weird writing in there, and it reminds me of the old video game days, whether you like it or not. Like, everybody loves the Jill Sandwich line from the original Resident Evil. It's funny and wholesome.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
Accidentally funny like the Evil Dead movie, the original one. But when it's something like Forspoken, well, that isn't wholesome. That's just kind of not very entertaining writing. Cheesy dialogue is good, cringy dialogue can sometimes be bad, but there's some games that just kind of walk a line. You have Jack and all the chaos stuff from Final Fantasy Origins.
Chaos.
That's a good side of it. We actually were entertained by a lot of that. And then, jumping from Jack, the edgy, awesome, badass, brooding protagonist thing coming back is also pretty cool. I mean, look at Clive from Final Fantasy 16. I know we've referenced Final Fantasy 16 a lot, but hey, we can't help it. We're all playing through it as we are making this video. Next, over at number 3, let's talk cheat codes. Cheat codes are good. We love cheat codes. In the old days, we loved messing with them, and while they've had their ups and downs throughout the years, we've seen some more recently, and we like to see them make a comeback. Video games are supposed to be fun. I mean, like, what's more fun than giving everybody, like, a big head with big head mode, or having them shoot paintballs, or being able to make them jump the whole map like Superman? Cheats are fun, Game Shark was sick, and when developers put in cheat codes and other similar type surprises in new games, we just love to see it. Trephang 2, which is pretty much brand new, has a cheat option right there in the main menu, and that feels like a great throwback. And over the last few years, like so many games have featured different types of cheats in their own way. Shovel Knight, The Sims 4, Risk of Rain 2, Sonic Mania Plus, even kind of Doom Eternal in its own way. We love them, we know you love them, so let's keep the cheat thing going. Now, down over at number 2, let's talk about those games that just have a bunch of interactive environments and physics, like almost to a ridiculous degree. For a while, it felt like games were getting a lot more static, very simple, but there's a new batch of games with a lot more interactive elements in the game world. Like, remember when Half-Life 2, all that physics stuff felt revolutionary? Well, now we got games that just have stuff that feels like that again. Tears of the Kingdom obviously is the biggest and best example. You're grabbing objects, you're manipulating things. A lot of the things you do in the game are achieved through manipulating the world's physics, embracing how objects interact with one another, and it's cool. Half-Life Alyx had a lot of that. I mean, that's obvious because it's Half-Life, but Starfield looks like it's keeping many of those elements from Skyrim and Fallout, the Elder Scrolls stuff. Dead Island 2 had a lot of decent environmental, element interactions. And also, as a weird side note tangent, I'm all for games getting more realistic and killing bad guys and having them fall over in realistic ways. That's great, but don't get rid of ragdoll physics, because sometimes when they glitch out, it's still really entertaining to see. Anyway, I digress. Over at number 1, the last thing that seems like it was kind of dying out, but it's making a comeback, isn't a good one in our opinion, but it's the console wars. The whole Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition situation feels like it brought back that petty squabbling and kind of pointless animosity of the console wars all over again. Maybe we're wrong, but we felt like the rivalry really cooled down a lot in the past few years, and it's only really come roaring back again with the court case, specifically because there's been so much stuff about competition and exclusivity and what Sony's doing to do this and what Xbox is doing to do this, and everybody's just kind of chalking it up like it's the Mets and the Yankees or whatever sports team. You can have your product and your thing that you root for and you're just happy you bought, but once it gets weird, I don't know, that's where you lose us. Obviously, it's important to compare the companies and consumer advocacy and consumer rights stuff and be an informed consumer. But once you start to get crazy, it's just big corporations and plastic boxes, man. We've seen that. We've seen the arguing online more than ever. Hey, maybe we're perpetuating it. I don't know. But returned, the console wars have. I'm not doing the Yoda voice. I can't do it. But yeah, that's 10 examples we have today of some seemingly abandoned or dying gaming things that are making a slow comeback. That's just us, though, of course. You guys probably have your own opinions, so let us know yours in the comments and let us know if you have your own list of things that are making a comeback. And better yet, some things you'd like to see make a comeback. Some good stuff. Let's talk about anything video games at all down in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And if you like what we do here, we just talk games with you guys every single day. Clicking the like button helps us. Thank you. But as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.